There is one more feature that's confirmed to be in 1.20 that hasn't showed up in a snapshot. It is, of course, the Sniffer, and we have some new information about that, but we have something much bigger first, because what if they're doing small updates so they can work secretly on a big update? Actually, they're not doing it in secret at all. They say in a news post that going forward from 1.19.3, Minecraft Java Edition will start to release multiple minor versions per year, including content and improvements that we think are ready to ship. This method is easier and faster than waiting for a major version to be ready to go out the door, and so the snapshots we're seeing right now are actually snapshots for 1.19.3, just with some 1.20 features also sprinkled in. Oh, and by the way, as a community, we've been wondering, will Mojang stick to their current 6-month development cycle, which they've been doing for the last couple of years, or will they go back to yearly updates like they were doing before? This article confirms that major versions will still be released yearly, containing fixes, improvements, and technical changes. And the simple explanation of what a major version is that it's going to be a new update that includes a larger number of gameplay features and is packaged in a nice format with a good title, like Caves and Cliffs or the Never update. Whereas a minor version is something like 1.19.2, because it's 0.2, or 1.19.3, which previously were mostly issued to fix critical bugs, but now they will be regularly occurring things to add small improvements to the game. This is a huge announcement because it means that instead of waiting for that yearly update, or even before the 6-monthly update, if they have something they're ready to release that has some serious quality of life improvements, they can now add that straight to the game. A great example of this, everyone's favorite feature if you're a long-term survival player, is the Elytra. Used to be kind of good by itself, but it was 1.11.1 where they actually allowed fireworks to propel the Elytra forward. This is a really cool feature that came in a .fit version update, and yeah, they used to do that quite frequently, and they stopped a while back, but they're going back to the days of adding smaller features in these little updates if they want to, which is pretty great in my opinion. Sure, we're going to get the yearly big themed update, but now we'll also get these smaller updates with things that they might want to include, which I think is an absolute win as far as the community is concerned. But speaking of wins, let's move into the second question, because shouldn't the camels be able to carry loads has been a really common question. People saying, well, camels are known for carrying a lot, and Mojang actually did a AMA on the Minecraft subreddit recently where they answered and confirmed this exact same thing. In fact, this particular response comes in from Olraf, who you of course all recognize, but he says, when adding the camel, we wanted to make sure to be respectful of old features. Sounds good. That means looking at what makes horses, donkeys, and llamas unique and making sure they still have a niche of their own in the game. After looking at the camel that has the ability to have 2 players riding at the same time and the unique dash ability, we didn't want it to overshadow the donkeys and llamas by giving it the ability to have storage on it as well. And he's totally right. The donkey is really slow, but it has storage. The horse is fast, but does not. And the llama is at least theoretically good for transporting a lot of stuff because they make a big line if you make them follow each other. And so, yeah, if the camel could then store stuff as well, you'd probably only exclusively use the camel, whereas in an ideal world, there is a niche for the horse, a niche for the camel, a niche for the llama, and a niche for the donkey, as ridiculous as that sounds. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool that they're not just going to make old features obsolete with new features. It's something a lot of games get trapped into, kind of power creep. However, if we're making changes to camels anyway to respect old features, this is the best idea I've heard all week. Saber Guy says, what if camels spawned at desert wells? Someone needs to hire this man at Mojang right now. I mean, camels like drinking water probably because they're carbon-based life forms, and also the desert well needs a use. Boom, 2 things in one. Speaking of 2 things in one, so do you think they're going to add the other desert features like the Oasis? And they're of course referring to the fact that, like in the last update, they added the swamp updates that was a losing biome vote. One of the other losing biome votes was the desert, which could have brought meerkats and a new tree, and wow, it would have been a wonderful thing. And so given that they're now updating the deserts to add the camel, will they add this thing? And I guess they also ask about the mesa, so will they add vultures and the prickly pears too? Especially given that camels eat prickly cactuses and pears and stuff. I think the answer is it's not a guarantee, and it's not even a thing on their table. I mean, we're not getting a desert update. 1.20 does not have the theme of desert update. It just so happens they wanted to add camels, and camels happen to spawn in the desert. However, given that that means they're probably, you know, approaching something in the desert code anyway, wouldn't it be cool to also add meerkats, or also add trees, or also add these other things? Yes, it would be, but that's no guarantee that it will actually come. Speaking of no guarantee, this seems like a nice but dull update. Is this not everything in 1.20? Yeah, just to be clear, although you've seen all the features they've announced so far in 1.20, besides one particular turtle dinosaur thing. But yeah, is this everything in 1.20? The answer is no. So the theoretical ideal version of this update is that now we have months until 2023 when this update is releasing, and in those months they're going to work on adding new features that we have no clue about. Next week's snapshot will be fixing bugs and parity issues from this week's snapshot, but then after that we genuinely have no clue what they're considering adding besides that one particular feature, which is of course the sniffer, by the way. I think we should mention that right now. What about the sniffer? A lot of people have been asking this ever since Minecraft Live. I mean, we voted for the mob, so why isn't it in the game yet? And the answer to that, if you're curious, because we don't necessarily know it's definitely going to be in 1.20, we don't know where in the development cycle it was until we got this question from the AMA that I mentioned earlier. Someone asked, will we have the ability to place plants on the back of the sniffer? And they confirmed that they haven't made any decisions about that kind of functionality yet, but it's a really cool suggestion. So this is obviously a polite way to respond to someone asking about a feature where you're not too sure, but the fact that they're not sure, the fact that they haven't made decisions yet, implies that they haven't gotten 90% of the way through development of the sniffer. Instead, again, they started after Minecraft Live a week ago, let me remind you, and now they're going to spend the next few weeks and months working out exactly how to make the sniffer an interesting mob. Ideally, they're not just going to say, yeah, exactly what it was at Minecraft Live, it sniffs and it makes one decorative plant or two decorative plants or whatever. Ideally, they're going to have it have some interesting gameplay link into the rest of the game, and that's what we're going to be seeing them decide on. So if you want to have feedback about the sniffer, how they can make it better, etc., now is actually the time. In fact, now is the time for the snapshot as a whole. They've kind of confirmed that the idea of this new snapshot system, where there's fewer features at a time, but less announced features, means that they can have more time to give feedback to the community. And so now is the time to give feedback on anything about 1.20, just like how Christian Sacramento gives feedback about the 1.20 beta naming system, because they say, I get the naming system for Bedrock, but why not use the Java naming scheme? 22W42A makes so much more sense, and they confirm what I say in every snapshot video, where 22 is the year, 42 is the week, and A is the snapshot within the week. So this is a very logical system to you once you know it, and maybe all of you watching if you've seen my snapshot videos. However, calling it obvious as a whole is a little bit misleading. Most people, the majority of Minecraft players, have no idea why those snapshots are called that way. In fact, they're very confusing titles that make old snapshot names really hard to discern. I mean, 12... W24B, do you know what snapshot that is? You don't know if that's a 1.13 snapshot, a 1.4 snapshot. It's almost impossible to tell. And so, yeah, the Bedrock naming system at least is really intuitive for, players. But also the other reason is the fact that on Bedrock, it takes a while to release betas and previews and whatnot. And so it's not guaranteed that a beta will release the same week it was produced. In fact, they genuinely might not know which week it's going to release in, which means naming it after the week is a little bit different and trickier. And yeah, whereas Java can just release an update 10 minutes after they're done. Sometimes there are huge bugs that don't allow you to start up a world or something, but that's the two sides of the same coin. One side has a much more intensive testing process. One side is just like, yeah, we'll release this now and we'll call it the day in the week of the year, etc. Speaking of naming things, IUCube says IBX Toycat has really started to take his content to the next level. His editing is insane, the commentary is immaculate, and the memes are hilarious, and I'm just including this in the video because it was a nice compliment. But for real, I really have been trying to up the quality of the videos on this channel however I can, as much as I can. It's been pretty hard in some places, but massive credit for the editing. It has gone up a quality too. Thank you to Harrison and to Samuel, who edit most of the videos on this channel. And although you don't necessarily notice or appreciate every single one of the edits, it's still pretty cool to see anyway. Speaking of pretty cool to see, Manx Darkpaw says, I wish signs had the ability to change the font size, and they're of course referring to the Bedrock Java difference, where hanging signs on Java are really, really tiny, and hanging signs on Bedrock allow you to have the same amount of text, but you can't necessarily see them as well. And this is something it looks like the developers themselves are actively considering. King Bee Dogs put out a poll asking, which of the texts do you confirm? And that's not necessarily confirming they're just gonna use the results of the poll, but they are trying to gather community feedback to work out if having less text is better, or if maybe people want more text even if it's less visible. Personally, it looks like me and 55% of people agree that although having less text sucks, it's better to be able able to see it and for it to be functional in that way. But the clear solution to this is, why don't they just do what you're suggesting and let you pick the font size? You could have a bigger font size on text for really big key signs, and then you could have a smaller font size on text that are trying to be a little instructional. And the answer as to why they don't do this is basically complexity, right? Even though it sounds like the easiest way to get both groups happy to say, pick your own font size, that adds another layer of complexity, and people don't like complexity. I mean, if we, take a great example from the real world, I'm recording this on a camera of some form. It's actually a webcam, but, this is a camera that is objectively better than this. You can do so many great things with a camera if you spend the money on one of these and you set up the settings just right, but most people prefer this, partially because this does so many other things too, but partially because this is so easy. If you want to take a picture or a video on this, you literally tap the record button and you go, and the rest is worked out for you. Although you can fiddle with the settings, most people don't choose to, and so that's why it's important to have a good default. That's why Mojang put so much effort into changing Steve's skin. Have you seen? They're on their 4th iteration. He's got his beard back and his skin tone has slightly changed. But yeah, if you look through Minecraft history, the goal is to make the default the simplest and the best in some ways. Anyway, speaking of default and simplest being best, the next comment here comes in from Narok Gamer, who says, as a Bedrock player, I like exclusive features. It's just really annoying to see that we have something that Java doesn't, and then Java has something that we don't, and I wish they'd all have the same stuff or not have anything separate at all. Basically, they're saying, man, why do we have separate features, exclusive features? Can't we just have parity? And I think most people vaguely get this feeling, and that's why Mojang confirmed in this very same AMA that, great question, we're always trying to close the gap between Java and Bedrock when it comes to parity, and understand that it is a delicate balance. Our vision is that if we have two kids on the playground, they shouldn't have to care about which version they're playing, and they can just share their cool tips anyway. In order to achieve that, we have to close the gap as much as they can, basically committing to not trying to make too many different parity things. However, this is a really nice thing to say. Again, everyone agrees that there should be closed parity. The only tricky question is, how do you actually do that in practice? When it comes to the Bedrock Java snapshots, things like the sign text can be easily fixed, but there are much bigger issues at play, like, like mobs handle differently, and the way your hunger goes down is slightly different, and the way you attack things is different, so this update's always going to be different for those reasons. But also, on just far bigger things, lots of Java exclusives are actually bugs, and so because they're bugs, they're not being added to Bedrock, like being able to stand on top of the Nether, or quasi connectivity. I think people like quasi, right? Quasi connectivity, I believe they call it. If you look at both of these things, they're features that are clearly bugs, and they're not being added to Bedrock because they are bugs, and yet they're not being removed from Java because the community likes it too much. There are so many tricky decisions for things like that, where you say, do we remove the bug even though people love it, or do we add the bug to Bedrock and to, the question is really tricky, and honestly, it's the big issue of trying to develop two separate games in two separate languages. It's always going to be impossible to make everyone happy with stuff like this, and it makes development so hard. They've spoken about this before, but there are so many things that they get really close to done on Java, then it doesn't work that way on Bedrock, or really close to done on Bedrock. It's really easy to do on Bedrock, but it's near impossible on Java. There are so many ways in which both games are kind of held back, and would you prefer a held back game in that way, or would you prefer a parity game? And the answer is you'd want to have the best of both, but then we get back to the camera and the phone question again, and what do you want? Do you want a camera or a phone? I'm officially announcing a giveaway. If you like this video and subscribe to it, you have a 0% chance of winning either of these. These are mine, they belong to me, and also a 0% chance of winning anything, because most giveaways are fake, and I'm not even going to pretend to do one right here, because I'm not insulting your intelligence that bad. Speaking of insulting your intelligence, every release should be set for when it's ready o'clock. I literally don't care if it doesn't appear until 2025, as long as it has everything they talk about on the run-up. This is a good question, or it's a good point. Like, honestly, why are they even saying 2023? What if it takes them till 2024 to release this? Or even crazier yet, what if it's December 2022, the current year, and they're like, we're ready to release, but we said 2023. Well, let's add more features anyway. So the answer as to why they put release dates on these things is partially because of marketing. Like, It's far easier to market an update if you know ahead of time when it's coming out. We will know when this update's releasing with a couple of months' notice, and we all know right now that like 2023 sometime is when you expect this. The second reason is because, I mean, like, if they could always make an update better. The wild update could have been made better in so many ways, but if you added all those things, you'd say, well, it could have been made better in this way. There is never a truly finished game. There's never a finished game update. There's always just less incomplete, and they could always add more features. So having a hard end date is pretty good for them in that sense. But also, there is the more interesting question here of like, do you work better when you're working towards a deadline? If you think you have a ton of time to do something, this is a part of human nature. If you have 10 years to do something, you'll probably barely do it for the first 8 years and then really work towards it in the last year or 6 months. Or maybe if you're really good at procrastinating, the last day, you'll be like, oh god, I said I'd do this in 10 years time. And this is kind of human nature. Like, if it's not a problem for now or the near future, are you really going to focus time on it? And yeah, this is why game development, like, it seems as though a lot of game development cycles have been improved by this horrific thing for developers where they're like, we're releasing on this day, no matter what, you make sure that... And so, yeah, there's this... it's more of a human psychology question. Do you work harder when you're pushed to work harder, or do you work better when you're free to do whatever you want? And the answer is, depending on the situation, it can be either. And yeah, you can tell me what you think in the comments as we move into the final question here, because Daniel Jones just says, the bamboo raft was the feature that I found most exciting, contrary to popular opinion, apparently. And, oh, signs for shops will be cool. I want to just take this first bit, though, because signs for shops are going to be cool. That's just objectively true. But, yeah, the bamboo raft is something which I just feel like, well, it's just a reskinned boat. But apparently a lot of people disagree. Like, no, they want a bamboo raft that is exactly a boat. It just looks different. And I think this is one of the places where I'm actually against the popular opinion, because I think the bamboo raft should have something. If we're going to have, all these boats that look exactly the same, and then we have a bamboo raft that looks different, there has to be some decent reason why it's different, right? I mean, especially if it's being made out of bamboo wood rather than bamboo stick. You know, I'm not going to question this too much. What I am going to say, though, is thank you. Oh, by the way, because I haven't mentioned this at all. I probably should have. Bamboo wood is crafted from bamboo sticks. You get 4 of them together. Something really cool that I'm excited about in this update is you'll be able to farm wood, like, fully automatically if you want to, which is pretty cool, honestly. I think it probably removes like a lot of the semi-automatic inefficient wood farms, and I think there should be some like fun trade-offs for bamboo planks maybe, but I do think that is something to look forward to. Make a bamboo farm now if you want to have infinite wood come 1.20. Speaking of come 1.20, if you liked this video, please do like it. It will... I'm not going to finish that sentence. What I'm going to say, though, is you can consider subscribing if you like videos like this. And, yeah, did you know it decreases your odds of house fire, statistically speaking? Probably true. Definitely isn't not true. Probably, maybe. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you in the next one. And you can watch my live stream from earlier if you want to. Goodbye. You shouldn't watch the live stream from earlier. Watch the Superplan instead. That's a more wholesome series, probably.